The first time I had a supernatural experience, I was asleep in my room at my parents' house. Now, I knew this house was haunted because in the middle of the night, I would hear something banging on my walls or my doors, and our dog, who slept inside, would bark on and off during one night, and the next night be completely quiet. But on this particular night, I saw an angel. I later found out that there is an old refrigerator under our house. Ask me why, and I couldn't tell you. Anyway, about a month after we moved in, we bought a 6-year-old Shih Tzu puppy. About 2 days after we bought her, my fiance and I were sleeping when he woke me up and told me the dog was on the bed. This, of course, was impossible, since she was only 6 weeks old, had short legs, and our bed was tall, with nothing around it for her to jump on. He told me that he felt something tugging at the covers around his neck and growling, and when he rolled over it, ran, and jumped off the bed. I just passed it off as him dreaming. But about a week later, while he was at work, he works night shift. I was asleep, and I woke up because it felt like something was running from one end of the bed to the other, and back and forth. When I rolled over, it stopped. That kind of freaked me out. Then about 3 months later, I woke up and saw a hand coming out of our closet door with what seemed to be a letter or a piece of paper in its fingers. The hand was small and white. When I gasped, it disappeared. Then, about a week after that, the bed would periodically shake while I was asleep. I later asked my fiance if he ever felt the bed shake, and he told me he did. And when he described how it felt, I knew we were both feeling the same thing. It's a subtle shaking as if we're an earthquake, except we live in Virginia, where we don't have earthquakes, at least not the kind you can feel. It was almost as if there was a big dog on the bed, scratching furiously at a flea, and he also described it the way I would have, which is when you wake up, your first thought is, man, my heart beating that hard? And then you realize that it isn't your heart at all. And just last week, I saw a young woman with brown curly hair and brown eyes peering at me from a crack in the closet door. And last night, the downstairs bathroom door slammed by itself, and the bed shook with both of us on it. Usually, it only shakes with one of us on it. Anywho, that's my story. If you have any insight, please give it to me, and you can put the stories on your site. I've had the special gift of seeing those who passed on to the afterlife, often seeing those who have long departed Earth. It happens periodically, but when it happens, I have some pretty vivid and memorable experiences. This has been happening since I was 8 years old. One of the scariest ghost encounters I had was when I was 23. I was a teacher at that time, and when I first started teaching, it had gotten very late, and I was in school grading papers. I remember it started to violently storm for a few minutes before it stopped after some time. At this point, it was so quiet. I was the only one in the school at the time. I had left the classroom door open when I heard a loud banging on the school lockers right outside the door. It startled me so much, I flinched so hard. I wanted to make sure it wasn't a break-in, so I went outside in the hall to investigate. That's when I was floored. Standing all the way down the hall near the lockers was a man in blue overalls with a long beard. He was holding an umbrella in his hands and looked so deranged. He honestly looked like a homeless squatter to me. I told him not to move at all and that I'd be calling the cops. that I was armed with weapons, so if he tried anything, I'd attack, which wasn't true at all. I was bluffing, but I needed to scare him anyway. The next thing I know, the man starts charging at me full speed. I run back into the classroom I was just in, slam the door, and hide under the desk. I remember hearing the most intense scream for a second, coming from the hallway. The lights go out, and it's pitch black for a moment's time. I started to hear a couple footsteps. Then, silence. It wasn't until about 2 minutes later, the lights went back on. I screamed out loud, "I'm armed. You need to leave. You are trespassing. You don't belong here," etc. I waited a minute or so under the desk and eventually got out. Still quiet enough to hear mice. I opened the door and head out into the hallway. There was no sign of life. Nobody was there. No deranged, homeless man. Just nothing. The school is pretty small. It's 1 floor and about 10 classrooms. There are, of course, 2 entryways to get into the school, the front and back. I went to check the doors, and to my utter surprise, they had been both locked the entire time. I thought to myself, how could anyone break in? The doors are locked, no windows are open, and all of them are locked as well. Was I hallucinating? No, not at all, because the man looked as real as any person I could see. So, I made sure to check all the classrooms, even opened the lockers, to make sure this man wasn't hiding in there. But there was no sight of this guy. I did end up calling the police. They checked out the school as well, and saw absolutely nothing. By morning, everyone was aware of what happened. I think they actually canceled school for the kids that day, because they were worried that a maniac was on the loose. I think they made the right decision. To this day, I have no idea what it was exactly. Of course, since I'm gifted, I lean towards the idea that this was a ghost. If it wasn't, then I'm really lucky I was unharmed. It could have been a lot worse, and I'm honestly thankful that it was just me that evening. I should mention that the school does have a history of oddities and ghostly phenomena. Supposedly there was a rumor that years ago, in the indoor pool at the school, a teacher went mad and drowned a student right in front of everybody. Legend has it that you could hear the moans and cries of a young person in the pool from time to time. One of the school janitors once swore that they saw a blue figure hovering right above the pool. Unfortunately, nobody took him seriously. He actually lost his job and was put into a mental asylum because he had a mental breakdown after seeing that. Anywho, that's my story and the surrounding rumors of this haunted school. I hope this was thoroughly entertaining. I don't work there anymore. I moved to a different state and work as a teacher currently. After what happened to me, I honestly couldn't stay. Thanks for reading. I'm from Dublin, Ireland, and when I was a boy, I forget how old I was, maybe about 14 or 15, I was staying with my parents with my old aunt at my family's ancestral home. There's a very old church just up the road from the house. It's so close that you can take a shortcut across just one field, and you're there. It used to be part of an old Franciscan monastery. Anyway, I was in that church on my own one summer's afternoon. It was a hot day, and though the church was naturally cooler, it was only a degree or so cooler. I remember feeling a little uneasy. All of a sudden, the hackles on my neck rose. I thought my little sister had followed me in, but then the temperature literally nosedived from somewhere in the high 90s to the mid 40s in a matter of seconds. I sensed that someone, or something, was watching me from the choir balcony above and behind me. Something told me that it sure as hell wasn't human. I don't know how, but I knew. I slowly turned and looked up. 3 seconds later, I was tearing down the road as fast as my legs could carry me. What I saw was the semi-transparent, cowled figure of a Franciscan monk regarding me from the balcony. He was barely there, yet details, the folds of his robe, the heavy cross about his neck, and the shaded outline of a face was visible, yet weirdly see-through. I'm now 20, and still refuse to enter that church alone. I've since asked the parish priest about it. He explained that he had seen an apparition a couple of times when he was alone in the church, but refused to comment or speculate further. I still feel funny talking about this because the only people that seem to believe me are the children around here. You described some of the things that have happened in your number 2 list of types of ghosts, so maybe I'm not crazy. We moved to this 120-year-old farmhouse about 4 years ago. When we first moved here, my youngest son was 3. He would ride his tricycle back and forth from the living room to the kitchen, which at the end was the basement door. He would ride his tricycle back and forth from the living room to the kitchen, which at the end was the basement door. I was doing the dishes when he turned to me and asked me to stop laughing at him. I told him I didn't say anything, so he proceeded to go to the living room and back again. When he reached the basement door, he turned to me and said, "Can you hear them, Mommy? They're laughing at me." I left it alone, but I never forgot it. As time went on, little things would happen that really got my attention, like the smell of perspiration when nobody was around. It would only last a minute or two, and it would only be in one spot of the room. I would go to other parts of the room, but could smell nothing until I went back to the original spot, and it would still be there. I would also smell it as if it were just passing by, in front of me, and then be gone. This continued for the next year, and then one day, I laid down with my son for a nap. It was about 1 in the afternoon. I would wait until he fell asleep, and then I would get up, but before I could move, our bed started shaking for no reason. It only lasted a couple minutes. After that, things happened a lot. My 8-year-old started to get smacked in the leg when he was asleep. He would always come downstairs afraid after it would happen. I started getting nudged on my leg at night, like someone was trying to wake me up. I am a very light sleeper, so I'd wake up immediately and look all around my bed in my room, but nobody was there. One night, when I was sleeping, I felt something lay across my legs. I tried to move, but it was so heavy, so I started to kick real hard and crazy, and it went away. Again, nothing was there. My son was 5 when he asked me if I could see the man's work boots standing in my dining room. He would see black things floating by and asked if I saw them. He would describe them like shadows, but the clincher was, when we were all sleeping at 4 in the morning and my dresser started shaking so hard, I thought I was going to fall over. I spoke to my pastor's wife about it, and she said they say a prayer every night that asks the Lord to protect them from any harm or evil. My children and I started including that in our prayers, but we added spirits also. We have never had another problem since, except I do still smell them from time to time. I do still hear footsteps across the ceiling when nobody is upstairs, but that's no problem. I don't mind. My mother, brother, sister, and I moved into an old house in Cambridge, New York in 1995. They had the intentions of refinishing parts of the house to make it more modern. To give you an idea of the house, it was built in 1884, had 4 floors, which consisted of a basement, first floor, second floor, and a full attic. Above the attic there was a window's peak, and access was through the attic by a flight of stairs. Strange things started happening that everyone just brushed off the first week. Every night at 7 p.m. on the dot, the house would fill with the smell of cigar smoke. Nobody in the house smoked cigars. We could hear voices of adults upstairs and people running around. When we went up, no one was there. We heard knocking on the walls all hours of the day. People were heard whispering. It would get so intensely cold in the kitchen, and appliances would randomly turn on and off. My sister was coming down the stairs when she looked to be pushed from behind, and luckily my mother was at the bottom and saw the whole thing. My mother was never bothered at all. It seemed to target only the children, which were my sister, 11, my brother, 13, and me, who was 15. She did hear things, and she also felt things, but never scared out of her mind. One day, my mother came to me and said she had to show me something. She took me to the basement door and said, "Watch." She opened the door and turned a light switch off. Then she shut the door, waited for a few seconds, then opened the door, and the light was back on, and the switch was up. We then proceeded to do this over and over again, and the same thing occurred, so we duct taped the switch off. We left that night to visit family friends, and when we returned, every light in the house was on, even the basement, where it looked like someone tore the duct tape from the wall. We left the light on. From then on, everyone in the house had seen shadows and felt presences, but my brother was the one who saw and felt the most. One day, he was home alone and said he saw 3 men in the backyard digging by the garden. He watched them for a few moments when one of them looked up at him and all 3 of them disappeared. He said the men looked as real as he did. He woke up one morning with 3 scratch marks down the front of his chest, and he said he didn't feel it, nor did he wake up during the night. My closet doors in my bedroom one night rattled uncontrollably while I was trying to sleep. This creeped me out so bad, I refused to sleep or even go into the room. The room became a used office, and me and my sisters opted to share a room. My sister said she felt something watch her whenever she was in the bathroom, and on one occasion, she said the shower curtain whipped open. I do believe her, because she ran out of the shower screaming and straight onto the front porch. We found out that the house was part of the Underground Railroad. When research was done on the house, it was found that it was also an underground bar during Prohibition. Many people lived in that house and also passed away in the house. A woman by the name of Ann Douglas hung herself in what was my bedroom. And we also know that there was also a shooting outside of the house, around where my brother saw the 3 men. There were so many incidences, but too long to tell all of them. We lived in the house for 5 months before selling it and moving out. We have heard that people have lived there or stayed a short time before moving out. The house is currently vacant. I wonder why. I had many paranormal experiences when I was young. As I grew older, I dismissed them as fantasy of the young mind. As I grew older, they became less, but 2, as an adult, stand out in my mind. One happened when I was in Germany, and the other didn't happen to me. The first time was when I was in Mittenfing, Germany. I was about 23 years old. I was new to the country, military, and looking for a place to rent. We, My ex, an atheist, and I found one. Our apartment was on the second floor. The landlord lived on the first, and there was an attic. The first night we stayed there, I had a dream about a person named Caleb. I could not see his face. All I could see was a shadow behind curtains. He was asking my ex to come with him, and I kept saying no. I had the dream several nights, but I never told my ex my dream. About 1 month after we moved in, I started experiencing phenomena. We had a bathroom with a skylight. I had this unnerving feeling that someone was looking at me while I bathed. Keep in mind that this was an old German house, and showers are hard to come by. I also had the feeling of being watched when I went into the kitchen. Several months passed by, and winter came. We had a lot of snow, and it was piling up. One day, I was in the living room when I heard this sound in the attic, like someone was dragging something across the attic. I dismissed it as snow piling up on the roof and falling. The only problem was, the snow really was falling north to south, roof pitch, and the sound I was hearing was from east to west. I ignored it for about 2 weeks, and the sound got so loud that I had to leave. My ex found me sitting on the landing one day and asked me what the problem was. I told him what I was hearing, and he laughed and told me it was the snow falling off the roof. I told myself, giggling, "You're losing it." Several days went by, and I kept hearing the sound. I did ignore it, but one day, I tried to lay down on the couch when I heard this sign next to me. I left the apartment again, but one night, we had a party, and my ex told people that I was hearing things. They laughed, and I was embarrassed, but I told them open the attic door, which was between the bathroom and kitchen, and see what was up there. They did, and everyone stopped laughing. I didn't really want to see what was up there, but then again, I did. My ex told me there was nothing up there but old rags. He tried to persuade me from looking, but I wanted to see for myself, so I climbed up the stairs and looked in the attic. What I saw took my breath away. There was an old black German baby buggy sitting up there. It was full of cobwebs, and someone pushed it, and I knew what that dragging sound was. It made a distinct sound that could be heard by everyone. I actually felt sick to my stomach. We stayed there for about another month, and nothing happened. Then one night, we laid down to go to sleep when I heard this knocking on the wall above us. 3 knocks. I asked my ex if we had heard that, and this is what he said. I'm going to tell you I didn't, but I did. Well, it was about 2 weeks after that when my ex told me we were moving. I didn't know it, but he was looking for another place. No explanations. We were just moving. As we were moving, I asked him why, and all he said was, "Let's leave this place." I asked him why, and he got really mad and told me we were just moving. Well, we moved, and about 6 months later I asked him why we moved, and he told me that he looked up to the kitchen window, and there was a man looking down at us. I know there was nobody left in there, because I was the last person to leave. He also told me he was experiencing the same things I was, but wouldn't tell me, because he was afraid to scare me. Keep in mind, my ex was an atheist. I felt chills go down my body. The next one didn't happen to me. It happened to my husband. Keep in mind that he is a Gulf War vet with over 20 years active duty military. Brooke Army Medical Hospital in San Antonio, Texas. Where it stands now is not where it used to be. You actually have to go on post to see the real hospital. It was abandoned many years ago. It is barricaded off, but I would like to hear more about this building. My husband went for training last year. He's a reservist now. He stayed in a hotel across from the abandoned building. After a few days he was there, he called me and told me he couldn't sleep in this haunted hotel. He stated he woke up several times to find his stuff from his closet strewn across the floor. He also said his closet was extremely cold. He also told me that there were roaches as big as tanks. I laughed most of it off until I went there. He told me that several soldiers complained about things happening to them, but no one believes them. Well, I didn't believe him until he drove me by the old hospital, and it looked like an abandoned building, barbed wire, and chains with locks. After a few passes by the hospital, he told me I needed to see the hotel. He got me into the hotel pretending I was a soldier. I felt more like a prostitute, the way the CQ looked at me. I will tell you, this place looks as if you stepped into the 30s. I swear they haven't changed the wallpaper since then. He kept telling me that when he looked out his window, the hospital would have lights on and the windows would be open. Keep in mind, this is an abandoned building. He took me to the room he stayed in, and yes, the whole room was cold. I could see the hospital from the window, and no lights. When we left, I looked up at the hospital, and I saw a room with lights on and a window open. I got the creeps. As we were leaving, he drove closer to it, and there was no way anyone could have gotten in there. Hey, Phantoms! Phantom is here, and I just want to let you know that I got my cord back up and working again, so I'm back in commission. Guys, I missed you. It's been 5,000 years. Well, it feels like it's been 5,000 years, but I'm just glad I'm back with the video. Anyway, please take a moment to actually share this video all across all social media. I really appreciate it so much, and it actually does a lot for my channel. It does a lot for this cause, because we're sharing the greatest stories that we could ever come across. Right, guys? I don't know what I'm saying. I'm such a dad joke, man. I don't even know what I'm talking about these days. Anyway, guys, no, seriously, leave a like if you like this video. Definitely comment in the comment section below. And as usual, tell me which story you like the most. And that's it, really. Love you guys. I'm just really glad I can record again and actually make content for you guys. Love you, and bye.